I have 9 cards on the sagebrush issue, some of them from people we have heard from not once but several times before. I would encourage those of you who have already addressed the board to limit your remarks so that those we have not heard from may be heard from this evening. The first speaker is Kevin Cordova-Brookie.
Good evening. I'm Kevin Cordova-Brookie, and I reside at 5115 Glenwood Avenue in La Crescenta. President Boger, Dr. Sheehan, and board members, it's a pleasure to be here this evening. I'm speaking on Sagebrook. I'm not sure that much more can actually be said about the sagebrush issue. It seems that all the information is in, and GUSD needs to vote on where they stand and move forward. Working together, I think, with La Cañada to present the best plan to LA County. But as we move forward, we need to understand what is going to happen to our community in Crescenta Valley. And I'm here to ask tonight that you provide more clarity, that you collaborate with us as you plan your next steps, that what's going to happen with Mountain Avenue and how it's going to affect all of us. Who's going to school where and what's going to be offered. Talk to us so that we know what's going on and we understand your clear plans. I want to hear from CV stakeholders that GUSD hears us and cares about what we have to say as we move forward. And I do believe it is time to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. James Bodnar.
Madam President, members of the board, just as a limb could not be severed from the body without significant effect on the body as a whole, so it is true with this annexation if it was to go forward. The disruption and impact would not be limited or confined to just a small area. The educational patterns, school attendance, loss of precious education dollars, and the many changes that would result would be significant and widespread. Although I agree with every word I just said, they're not my own. They're your words. They're the words of the Glendale Unified School District back in 1992 that you provided to the Los Angeles Committee on School Organization. I believe the board is paving the way for the territory transfer without knowing the ultimate destination and the effects the decision will have on the education of our children. The board appears to be hesitant of doing what it knows deep down is right because of potential legal fees. Let me remind the board that it has won the legal fights of the past, and it can win the legal fights in the future. I know Glendale can win if it supports its students. I know Glendale will fail if it so easily abandons them. The key question is, does the transfer improve the effectiveness and efficiency of our students' education? If you can't confidently say yes to that question, then you have to oppose the transfer. This same question will need to be answered by the county committee as they're part of the process. I mentioned this at the past board meeting, but it's worth repeating. There is not one school district, not one in the entire LA County that has the same boundary as their city boundaries. There are 2 school districts, San Marino and Beverly Hills, that have similar boundaries, but that has to do with when the city was formed and the school districts were formed mainly. And there is an easy explanation for this. The governing bodies that set up the school boundaries and the city boundaries are separate. What La Cañada proponents are asking for is not typical and sets a bad precedence for government. Proponents even make this argument while at the same time its own school boundaries go into the city of Pasadena and the unincorporated areas of Los Angeles County. In fact, most of La Cañada Unified School District is outside of the city boundaries. Now, last month, I think you know, was the 60th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education. And you should be very concerned about how this relates to your decision. Because back in 1992, when we were arguing this, you brought ethnic and racial issues up as a concern. You should consider the impacts to current and future permitted students in La Cañada schools, because La Cañada has implied that those kids will be phased out as the new students come in. Your approval may impact the diversity in our local schools. You might be inadvertently closing the door slowly on minorities and disadvantaged students that make up a larger percentage of the permitted students in La Cañada. The economic impacts of the transfer go well beyond the bond discussions that you've even made. The school will lose millions of dollars in lost state funding each year. Because of the lost students, there will be a reduction in the number of teachers. Although the district will not have to pay those students, the teachers' salaries, as they retire or they're laid off, you'll still have the unfunded liabilities associated with those teachers. You'll still have the fixed expenses that the district has to incur. Bottom line, please don't sell out our students short. Better yet, don't sell our students out at all. I have a different path for you to consider. Take it slow. There is no immediate need to transfer the territory. Allow the students in Sagebrush to attend locking out of schools if they want to on a phased open enrollment basis. Use the extra time to evaluate the impacts on the education of our children. Adjust your plan when needed, but don't take the huge risk of transferring the territory first before we understand the overall impacts. I fully support locking out a parent's desire to improve the education of their children. My main concern is that we shouldn't be sacrificing the education of one child to advance the education of another child. Your board has the opportunity to drive the process towards improving education for all students, rather than taking a back seat. Please don't let the fear of lost bond revenue or fear of a costly lawsuit drive the process. If you're going to be driven by one thing, be driven by the education of our students. Please don't sacrifice Mountain Avenue Elementary as a matter of convenience or risk management. The key question is, does the transfer improve the effectiveness and efficiency of our students' education? That's the question. If you can't say yes, then say no. Education must always come first. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tom Smith.
Good evening, Tom Smith, 5524 Ocean View Boulevard. Superintendent Sheehan, President Boger, members of the board and staff, appreciate all you've done again. And I'd really like to thank you foremost for putting out the updated FAQs. When I went through there, I was really pleased to see how much additional information had been added. And I'm hoping that it went a long way to dispelling some of what I think were some of the unfounded concerns. I think the discussions that have happened to date, that you've been very involved, very professional. I would never characterize them as having taken a back seat, but I think the FAQs that you put out were really a really good update for everybody, a lot of good information. And then I want to be really brief, but one of the things I do want to mention and urge you to do is, you know, the discussions, I think, to go to the next level have to go to the next level. There's been a lot of concern, a lot of comments made about wanting more detailed information, and, you know, people have used the phrase, the devil's in the details, and I agree with that. And I think the best way to really start getting into the details is to start making an attempt to actually put together an MOU or the agreement or something, so you can really start thinking through the nitty-gritty that always takes longer than what people thinks it's going to. So that would be my encouragement to you, is to take the next step, take it to the next level, start trying to formalize what I think is the very good framework that we have here today, and let's move this to a vote. So thank you.
I apologize. I'm going to have difficulty with this name. Nalini Lazuisk? Lazuisk?
Very close, Mary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nalini Lazowitz.
Thank you.
Actually, I got my name Nalini from the La Crescenta Ananda Ashram in the 70s, so that's kind of a little bit about my background. I've been working with Tom and with the community members for almost probably 10 months now on this campaign, and I think it's a really terrific civics lesson for our whole community. I'm thinking that maybe after this next phase of petitioning our government is over, it might be valuable to invest some time to actually, you know, write up some curriculum, because a lot of students and teachers and administrators in this region don't understand the rich history of our region. City of La Cañada was an unincorporated part of LA County, just like La Crescenta is now, and members of the community petitioned their government, and we became a city. And from day one, the folks that lived in our little quarter-mile strip of properties, we wanted to be part of the city in terms of our schools. And right off the bat, as a new city, we really didn't have the clout. Glendale wasn't prepared to sacrifice property taxes. I can understand that, you know, having, you know, become dependent on your budgets. And yet, It's now been 50 years, and for 50 years, the citizens of La Cañada, which is a small city of 18,000, we want to be a full partner in our city. There are certain programs that young people don't have access to who live in our neighborhood. I would never run for, Miss La Cañada, but if my daughter wanted to, it would be very nice if she could enroll in that, but she can't because she doesn't go to La Cañada schools. Same thing with scholarships, same thing with internships. Mountain Avenue is a fantastic school, and Sagebrush has many alumni and PTA and supporters of Mountain Avenue. Our support and love for that school is not going to go away. We're going to be good neighbors. But I have to say my closing comment has to do with, if your decision is based on the education of children, then I have to let you know that in Sagebrush, the civics education of our children is being compromised year after year. And it would be really great if we had a positive conclusion to this effort and we all became partners in a historic change. The city of La Cañada will be stronger for it, and with a stronger city, you'll have a stronger region. And I just want to thank you all for your hard work on this. Thank you.
We are now just over 10 minutes. Harriet Hammonds.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, President Boger and Board and Dr. Sheehan. I'm Harriet Hammonds. I live at 5404 Rock Castle Drive, La Cañada, Flint Ridge, 91011. I want to talk about the decision about moving the territorial transfer between Glendale and La Cañada. The decision over the last year between Glendale and La Cañada schools and the city of La Cañada regarding proposed territory transfers have been professional and productive. But this time, to move them along, especially that greater commitments have been given to ensuring continued access to the park and bridge, and that Mountain Avenue will remain a neighborhood school. Initially, it seemed like reasonable concerns were being raised about the lack of formal plan for Mountain Avenue Elementary and the potential outcomes in the sale of the drop-off on Ocean View. Recently, it seems like these concerns have become polarized and led to inflammatory statements being made in blogs, emails, and petitions. I greatly concern that we may be headed down the same path that pitted neighbor against neighbor since 1990s. Those days were immensely painful to the Sagebrush families and residents of the Mountain Avenue School. We should do everything possible to avoid a repeat that past and negotiate settlement like the one that has advanced so far the past months in the best solution to this long festering issue. I urge the Glendale Unified School Board to finalize this discussions, draft whatever documents are needed, and bring this matter to a vote to have the territorial transfer plan go forth. Thank you very much for your time and for your attention. Have a good evening.
Cheryl Davis.
President Boger, board members, Dr. Sheehan, my name is Cheryl Davis, and I live at 4816 Rosemont Avenue, La Crescenta. However, I've been asked to speak on behalf of Sharon Raghavashari at 2209 Maurice Avenue in La Crescenta. My name is Sharon Raghavashari, and I have asked that someone read this for me today as I am unable to attend the board meeting. My husband and I have 2 children who attend Mountain Avenue Elementary School. We do not live in the Sagebrush area. As such, we feel that our interests have been completely ignored by this board. The district spent a sizable amount of money to survey registered voters in the Sagebrush area about their feelings on a possible territory transfer, yet did not bother to ask the rest of us who live within the school's boundaries and will still be supporting Mountain Avenue if a transfer takes place. How are our voices being heard? Why have the Mountain Avenue parents not heard detailed options regarding changes to our school if a transfer happens? We've heard how the exit of students would happen, but not what happens to those of us left behind. Surely at this point the district has some clear plans. Why have they not been shared with the parents? Why must we wait until after the territory transfer has been decided? It seems to me this board has only been concerned with what the Sagebrush residents want, with no regard for the desires of the larger Mountain Avenue community. This must change.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jesse Shelton.
Hi, I'm Jessie Shelton, and I live on Evelyn Street in La Crescenta, Montrose. I live in Crescenta Valley, and Mountain Avenue was my school. I wanted to let you know about how great Mountain Avenue was for me. I had great teachers and made lots of friends. We used Ocean View Park for many events and elementary school things like lunch with the principal and Pioneer Day. And both my sister and I had many Girl Scout meetings at the park. It was a great place to be picked up after school. Sometimes when my mom came to pick me up, she would park near the school and walk to the park. I liked these days because she would always start talking to other moms, and I would get to play longer with my friends. When I was at Mountain, the station fire closed our school down for many days. When we got back to school, some of my friends and I were nervous, afraid of another fire. It was nice to know we had 2 ways to leave the school. Many of my friends I met at Mountain, Rosemont, and CV live in Sagebrush area, and we never thought of it as them being in La Cañada or me being in La Crescenta or other friends being in Glendale. We're all Mountain Avenue Bears, Rosemont Spartans, and CV Falcons. I love my school, and I hope that whatever happens, we can use the Ocean View Park, and that Mountain continues to be the elementary school it was when I was there.
Thank you, Jesse. And may I say how nice it is to see you back at a board meeting. Jesse used to attend meetings regularly under that table as her mother took notes for the newspaper.
Thank you to all of you for listening and for your service and being patient with all the public commentary. It's appreciated. I live in the unincorporated part of the county, and I live a couple blocks outside of the city of La Cañada. I have a high opinion of Mountain Avenue and what it has done for my child, and even though my child will be graduating soon, I care enough about the school and the community to be up here talking. I know the issues are complex, and I've heard a lot of different opinions, and I sympathize with all the decisions that you have to make. I know it's exciting at first to hear that La Cañada is giving us $2 million for the Ocean Views Boulevard school drop-off area. And but I'd like us to take our time to think about the good of all, especially the children who are impacted by the future lack of a safe alternative drop-off and pickup location. The loss of the drop-off and pickup location is a complex issue. I know, when it's owned by the city of La Cañada, I don't know that they're going to want our school traffic over there. When the Ocean View Bridge was closed because there was a lot of flooding after the station fire, and because of safety, it had to be closed. Because I live, as many of the Mountain Avenue residents do, we live just south of La Cañada, and we use that drop-off point. The traffic backed up, clear down Briggs. It was clear to the sheriff's station because it's not meant to handle that much traffic. It's a 2-lane road, and Mountain Avenue is also a dead-end cul-de-sac. And so it just can't handle that many things. So I'd encourage you, and I know La Cañada wants parkland because I knew a friend who was on their Parks Commission, and it's exciting for them. But before you do that, I'd really like to look at the long-range traffic CEQA study, talk to the sheriff's station, see if, because we don't know what Mountain Avenue is going to be, but we do know that 500-plus kids can go to school there in some sort of capacity. And I'm assuming that they could be coming still from my neighborhood. They could be coming from other neighborhoods as well. So I'd like to look at really the traffic study and have it, if we are transferring it for parkland, that it wouldn't just be for emergencies, but it would also be a drop-off location, because Briggs carries everyone up to Upper Briggs Canyon. There's a huge amount of traffic, and it's a 2-lane street. So any traffic incident on that would impact the sheriffs. They'd be forced to drive on the wrong side of the street. And that sheriff's station also serves La Cañada as well. So I'd like you to look at all those issues. And I know it's complicated, and thank you for your time. But before we do it, let's look at the traffic too. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ortiz. Our next speaker is Edmund Sarkisian.